What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we've got some awesome information for you guys, but before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button. Also subscribe if you're someone new and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And sorry for any bad audio or background noise as I'm still using my secondary setup here, but we've got some pretty interesting things to go over with Metroid Dread. As many of you guys know, I've been keeping up and tracking some of the sales of this game through some internal sources that I do have, in addition to the Amazon sales charts, and comparing them to other games on the Nintendo Switch that have ranged in various different ways. So stuff like Fire Emblem Three Houses, or stuff like Paper Mario the Origami King, Clubhouse Games, other titles that have crossed a certain threshold and how they've done. And it seems like Metroid Dread is having a large amount of success, but it proves something that I've been saying for quite some time now when it comes to the launch of Metroid Dread and the Nintendo Switch OLED. I think that was the wild card or the kicker in all of this that could help propel Metroid Dread even further than what I thought it was originally going to do, because new hardware brings new hype, brings more attention to certain pieces of software, especially when you market it in a certain way. And I think that Nintendo nailed, despite what people will say with certain things online, when it comes to the system itself and the marketing of the system, the Nintendo Switch OLED. I think they did a really good job just with their initial reveal trailer of the game, pairing it with different software. But the biggest thing was pairing it with Metroid Dread. That was the first thing that you saw there. Exciting new game with the vibrancy of it and pairing it with it. And I think that left a very big impression on gamers out there. People who had the version 1 of the Nintendo Switch, or people who were interested in OLED tech and wanted to see what OLED was all about and didn't take the plunge yet with a big OLED TV themselves, and wanted to maybe get on the OLED train for a lot cheaper than going out there and purchasing an OLED TV. So I thought that Nintendo was effective with the Nintendo Switch OLED in that sense, because we do have some sales coming out when it comes to Metroid Dread on the Amazon bestsellers. We're going to look at the US and also Japan, and right now Metroid Dread is absolutely killing it. This game is doing fantastic, and the Nintendo Switch OLED is helping out. Now, I'm going to be covering a couple days here when it comes to the sales, and I put this up on Twitter as well, and it was a couple days ago or a day or so ago, and I looked at the Amazon bestsellers. Metroid Dread Special Edition was #1, and people that are kind of reselling it, but any type of stock they get for this special edition, it sells out pretty much instantly. The #2 was Metroid Dread, the actual game, the normal one, for 60 bucks. #3 was the Nintendo Switch OLED model, the white Joy-Con model. Then #4 was the Nintendo Switch OLED model with the neon and blue. So definitely people were hyped to pick up the Nintendo Switch OLED and also pick up Metroid Dread, in addition to just like the special edition, anything they can snap up with it. And as of the time that I'm recording this video, Metroid Dread, the regular edition, is #1, Metroid Dread Special Edition is #2, and Nintendo Switch OLED White and Nintendo Switch OLED Neon Blue, they're in the top 6 overall, with a couple other things, some like screen protector and of course the Oculus. So it's doing extremely well at this point. But it also begs like another question here. Is like, wait a minute, I thought some people said that Nintendo Switch OLED wasn't going to do well, or people didn't want this because it wasn't a true upgrade, it wasn't a Nintendo Switch Pro or whatever the case is. But that definitely seems to be wrong, because we can't just go off of Amazon here. If you go on Walmart, or if you go on Best Buy, if you go on various different places, at least here in the US, the Nintendo Switch OLED has been doing absolutely phenomenal. It has been doing extremely well when it comes to it, and you can't even really find it. I mean, you can find it sometimes, but then they sell out for the most part. From what I'm getting in terms of reports, that some stores had some extra stock of it, but they would go very quickly. I do have a couple sources at Best Buy and Walmart regionally, and those systems are moving very quickly. So it's one of those things to where, yeah, like I understand where some of the stuff came from when it comes down to like Nintendo Switch OLED, and I didn't necessarily disagree with it, but it does seem like people are willing to check out this Nintendo Switch OLED because of the OLED tech. I think that is the biggest driving factor of it is the fact that you do get that OLED tech in there, and people have started posting comparisons with it, and it does make a difference with the vibrancy of the screen and everything. So that was the big thing for me, at least as someone who owns an OLED TV myself. I knew that was going to be a very big difference, especially for people who play portably, and if you already have like a version 1 of the Nintendo Switch and you wanted something to kind of upgrade or update based off of what you had there. So very good to see that as well. And I think it's very interesting, like everything that I said was going to happen with Metroid Dread with the Nintendo Switch OLED is happening at this point based off of all the indications here, based off of what we're seeing from different stores. And I see like Wario64 and CheapED, they're posting links to Metroid Dread Special Edition. They're posting links to these Nintendo Switch OLEDs. You go there to see, okay, well, can I get a special edition, or can I get a Nintendo Switch OLED? And bam, it's usually sold out. And it does seem like Metroid Dread is continuing to sell post-release. We're not seeing it to where it just flashes up at number 1 just for a bit then goes down. Remember, Metroid Dread has been up in the top 5, top 10 pretty much for months now before it launched. Now post-launch, it's beating out games like Far Cry 6, for example, which that's going to have a much bigger digital download based on the platforms that it's on with Xbox and PlayStation. But to see Metroid Dread even above a Far Cry 6 in any type of region with the Nintendo Switch OLED is definitely a good sign, considering the two franchises sell completely different in terms of what people buy. But once again, not saying that Metroid Dread is going to outsell Far Cry 6, because that's probably not going to happen, considering that Far Cry 6 is on so many platforms and has just a huge AAA type of backing that people just buy. But at the same time, it's good to see Metroid Dread hold its own on various different places, and the excitement for the game with the review scores combining with the new Nintendo Switch OLED tech, and just combining those two to propel the game and propel the sales further than what we would have ever gotten before with a previous Metroid game. Now, I'm basing it off of what I've done before, but if you're looking at it, games like 1-2 Switch, games like Paper Mario the Origami King, games like Fire Emblem 3 Houses, everyone's talking about where this Metroid game is going to sell, and I will have updates to this, but I would be surprised now that we're a couple days out and we're seeing the positioning and how everything is, and the hype and kind of what's going on with the review scores, and how this is just the beginning. We still have the holiday season for Metroid Dread to sell as the only big Nintendo first party release that is new, not something that's like a remake or a re-release like, let's say, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, or Advance Wars, or the Mario Party game. I think that this is going to continue through the holiday season, and I would be very surprised if Metroid Dread doesn't sell 3 to 4 million units by the end of the year or so, based off of this start right here. Momentum is always killer, and if you look at it from, like, let's say, a Fire Emblem 3 Houses standpoint, a game that sold over 3 million units in less than a year, this game, Metroid Dread, did better beforehand with the sales based off of the Amazon and tracking and what I've seen, and is doing better post-launch as well based on the positioning, and also based on the install base, which is very important to note here. The install base is bigger than when some of these other games came out and did post 3 million units in a year's time. Like I stated, the games before with Paper Mario, or with the games like Fire Emblem, or even a game like Clubhouse Games, which was never in the top sales charts in anything, and that game did over 3 million. So I'm very confident in my analysis that I had before, and basing it off of what we've seen so far, it does seem like Metroid Dread is going to be the best-selling one in the series when it comes to the franchise, best-selling Metroid game, and it's going to even do beyond what maybe people even thought was possible for a Metroid game, just based off of the hype, based off the review scores, based off Nintendo Switch OLED, and also the Nintendo Switch effect is definitely in play here. I think it would be hard to ignore everything that is happening at this point with this game, considering games that have came out before on the Nintendo Switch and weren't positioned anywhere near as high as we're seeing continuing post-launch with this. Usually, like I said, you see it for like a flash for a bit, maybe it kind of rises up right before launch, then it fades a day or two afterwards, whereas Metroid Dread has been very high for a long time in the positionings with Amazon and pre-orders with GameStop and everything, and now continues to be at the top of the sales charts a few days out as well. So it's very good to see that, and I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to seeing what Nintendo has to say, and of course the future of the franchise, because people are just absolutely loving what Metroid Dread brings to the table. They're loving what it brought to the franchise. It's so good to see the passion for Metroid Dread. I was on my friends list on the Nintendo Switch, and I saw just like a wall of Metroid Dread, just a wall that I've never seen before. You didn't see that with the other games. Not everybody was playing it like they're playing this one, but once again, new system, new day, new era with the Nintendo Switch, and Metroid is back, and I think that it's here to stay based off of what we're seeing so far. So what are your thoughts with this when it comes to Metroid Dread, how it's doing so far? Also with the Nintendo Switch OLED, let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button. Also subscribe if you're someone new. Click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.